Dimp Digital Presents Idle Game Chat.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is the weekly video games podcast where we give our impressions of the games that you can play today and react to the latest news from the wonderful world of video games. We are here every Monday on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free. This week, I am joined by the former one-time Dimp Digital Gaming Quiz champion. It's Pac-Man himself. It's Tom Adcock. How's it going?
It's going good. You're sort of really having to sort of go back through the years to say that little intro. Need something else on my resume.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, do you feel like you should have won more here at Dimp Digital? Because I look at the itinerary, I see it's you that's on as the guest. I go, okay. I go and grab all the accolades, and all I see is a one-time quiz champion, which many are saying is a fluke. And the pedigree that comes with it, the experience that you've got, should that be a better resume, a better CV that you're being presented with to the fans?
It should be, mate, but also results don't lie. I'm fucking atrocious, so probably not, if I'm honest. Maybe I've been around a long time, but I feel like I'm a punching bag, like very much a journeyman fighter, just sort of getting my face punched in, turning up, doing it all again. Sort of like, right, what's going on?
Well, it's tough because I may have oversold you to the rest of the Dimp clan. I was like, look, this guy knows his stuff. He's been around a long time, and thus far all they've seen really is one quiz win and a meltdown in the Grand Prix last year, where about 15 games were subbed out and it ended up on minus points.
Oh no, the real worries as well. I think is it Adkins or Hall? I think Adkins has always been on the winning side. It sort of gets no one really sort of brings it up. I'm the exact opposite. It's yin and yang. I've always been on the losing side. So yeah, so I'm a real curse as well. So
well, maybe you won't get a team victory under your belt. I don't normally read those off, to be honest, because I kind of think the captains or the people in the championship game deserve that accolade. But the Grand Prix is its own beast, so you could come off and win that. But
yeah, I've put some effort in this year, and I said it last year though. I was gonna try and get those windows and make the moves when it's necessary, and I blow it every time.
Yes.
So I'll try and be better this time.
Yeah, well, we'll see how you get on, and we'll definitely check in as the year develops. Games have already started coming out, and we're going to be treated to a few more before the summer, I guess, and before the transfer window kicks off, even in March. But this week's show, we've got a couple of games at least to be talking about, and there may be another little quick subject at the end. But before we get into any of the details, Idle Game Chat can be supported on Patreon if you go to patreon.com/idle game chat if you want to put hand in pocket. You can also subscribe to the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Dimp Digital. If you got Twitch Prime, you can chuck a freebie there. The money is being reinvested in new equipment for people, so Adcock might get a new microphone. I mean, he's just got new super fast internet. That's not quite paid for by Dimp, but could have been subsidised if he put a claim in, missed out. So there's all sorts of ways you can do it. Adcock, you actually haven't subscribed. As we record this, you've not subscribed to the Twitch channel, which is a sin.
Oh, it's another massive sin on my... Yeah, and do you know what? We've actually got two Amazon... It makes it worse.
You're joking.
Can we tell you this? Both got an Amazon Prime account, so could do it double and ain't done it at all.
Right, off air, that'll be...
Yeah, can you rectify this? Poor, innit?
Yeah, I'll have the logins and do it if I need to. I can just do it. Get your own browser set up.
Oh, mate, I've got my nephew here. We've got three in-house Amazon Prime accounts.
Yeah, but your nephew, I would imagine, might actually watch some actual proper streamers, so he might actually save his for something genuine. I mean, if he's not,
probably ain't doing.
Unbelievable. Right,
we'll sort that.
We'll sort that, definitely. Bloody hell, money left on the table. We're having a big piss up when all the beaches are open again. 4th of July. Amityville. No, Amityville. Amity Island. Anyway, video games. Tell me why. So, I played this. It's a Dontnod game. So, think Life is Strange. think vampire or vampire. I can't even remember how to pronounce that one, but
I didn't realise that was there. That blew it for me once on the gaming quiz. But Life is Strange, very good.
yeah. So if you played any of, you've played the first one, or what have you done with Dontnod?
Annoyingly, I've played Life is Strange 1.
Yes.
I think it's 3 episodes, and Life is Strange 2, maybe similar. 2's the one with the two brothers, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. But weirdly, I enjoyed them both, and I don't really like to start games and not finish them. But I've done that with both of these. I think they're both Game Pass jobbies, and I've just kind of something else has come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really enjoyed them. They're decent.
Yeah. Well, Tell Me Why was a Game Pass jobby, and it was kind of tabled as like it's an Xbox exclusive as we speak. I mean, it's on PC as well, but you can only get it on that system, and it was on Game Pass, and it was Dontnod, and I've played pretty much everything since Life is Strange. So I've done Life is Strange 2, is it Beyond the Storm, I think the prequel's called. That wasn't even Dontnod, but that was still in that series. So the only one I haven't done is Twin Mirror, which has got a bit of a lukewarm reception. So that went from purchase sort of early doors to, well, it's got to wait for Game Pass now or something similar.
Yeah.
So that's the only one in recent times, and then before that I don't remember me, and I missed, as I mentioned, Vampire. It didn't do, because the one thing I would say Dontnod haven't been able to prove to me is that they can handle any action in the game in space just yet. And with Tell Me Why, they don't even bother. They literally don't bother trying to do any action. There's zero action in this game. It's full blown narrative driven adventure type jobby. And that's kind of up my alley, because I find them quite easy to play. Do you have any familiarity with Tell Me Why? Do you even know it existed until we fired this podcast up and started waffling?
No, but I did a little bit of research when you told me this is what it was going to be, and a couple of things stand out.
Yep.
Basically, with the old games, especially the second one, I like they're really good at like invoking a feeling through like where they are, like I think they're on the road and they're walking, they run away from home, the brothers in Life is Strange 2, and they're walking through and they go to those lakes and it's like autumn and they're getting cold.
Yeah.
And I saw on this one it's set in Alaska, and I was like, right, I like Alaska, I'm on board for that. And then also I don't know if you were going to reveal this, but first transgender. So basically, Alaska got me, and then the first transgender protagonist in gaming, main cast.
Yes.
I was like, right, what's going on there?
Yes. So how do I mean, these are always difficult particular games because they hinge so much on the narrative, but I believe I can kind of talk around stuff where I need to, so that anyone who wants to go off and play it can still enjoy it.
Can I ask one more question before you start rattling on?
Yep, quite rattling.
Try and talk in. Is there a supernatural sort of quirk in this, like those other games? Is my other sort of like off the bat question, because I don't know that. I'd like to know.
Yes. So 2 characters, first of all, you get to play as. So Life is Strange 1 and 2, you're playing as one character. I think you're playing as the older brother in Life is Strange 2, aren't you?
That's it, yeah.
And I think it's Max you're playing as in Life is Strange 1. But in this one, you've got 2 brothers that you're going to be playing as, and they're twins.
Okay.
So one of the things that we all know about twins is they're weirdos. They've got always a weird connection, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they can't really be trusted in a sort of in a conversation. That's exactly, you talk about a supernatural element, and I guess it is. The twins themselves have something called the voice, and it's basically a telepathic type connection between just those two. So what it allows them to do is to say, if they're talking to a character who's in the house or whatever, they can talk amongst themselves in their heads without them knowing. So that's kind of like one of the quirks that they've got. And the other one is when they're both in a certain environment or an area where they've both been previously. So when they're kids, for example, there's a lot of callbacks to when they were children, when they were growing up. they are able to witness and review a memory of that in sort of real time. It's not quite it's not properly rendered or anything. It's like little outlines of figures, but they can relive memories essentially and suss out what people are saying. And the only difference with that is that in some situations, one of the twins will remember it differently to one of the other twins. So it's not always 100% in the book.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so you've got Alison, who is the sister, and then Tyler, who is the male who's transitioned from female. And I'll set up exactly what happens because it's pretty much in the opening scene. Tyler has spent the last 10 years in like a juvenile detention, I guess it is, or some sort of social care or maybe enforcement care, because when they were kids 10 years ago, the mother ended up dead and Tyler was kind of blamed for it in one way or another, basically because he admitted to it. So you play as both these characters as they kind of reunite properly for the first time since that event. And really the crux of the game focuses around those two. It focuses around Tyler's transition as well, and how the community portray him now. Like he's gone away as this. It's like a small town. Like it's set in Alaska. This really small town, Delos Crossing, it's called. And everyone, it's sort of not quite like Wakerin, a bit smaller than Wakerin, maybe Little Wakerin, that level where everyone sort of knows everyone. So he goes off as a little girl and comes back as a grown male. So you kind of get those interactions with the locals who are sort of like, oh yeah, I heard about this, and it's like, you know, people are ignorant and some people don't take kindly to the fact that he's transitioned. But really, the crux of the game is around Alison and Tyler reconnecting. They spent 10 years apart. And B, finding out what really happened sort of on that night where the mother ended up dying. You know, was it how they remembered it? Was it something else? Was someone else involved? And that's the crux of it. And they are you set off with those two to try and dig deeper into exactly what happened, suss out, you know, who was there a foul play at hand? Was there not? And you meet all interesting characters along the way. You've got conflictions between Alison, who's been adopted by like the local police chief, and he's kind of not liked by Tyler for various reasons. So you've got a conflict there. And Alison's obviously really fond of Eddie. I think his name is Eddie Brown, police chief. So it's an interesting dynamic, a very interesting story. Obviously tackles some quite heavy subject matter, and like you mentioned about a transgender character leading the game. I've certainly not played one before. Difficult for me to sit here and say whether they've done a good job of it, being a straight white male. I guess from my perspective, it didn't feel forced or disingenuous or anything like that, which is a good thing, but you'd have to kind of ask someone who's been in that situation as to whether it was accurately portrayed. But yeah, it probably lacks a bit of drama of the other ones, of like the Life is Strange's and whatnot. It's a much more of a personal, smaller scale type issue that's been, well, you know, the death of a mother is not small scale, but I mean in comparison, you know, you're not trying to escape to Mexico and save your life and things like that. You know, you're trying to unravel history basically, and it touches on some really interesting themes and one thing that I've always been fascinated with is how reliable is that memory of yours? Because you'll sit there and think, oh yeah, it's the most reliable thing on earth. When you actually pick holes in your memory, you'll realise that it forgets half the things and gets loads of shit wrong. And that's one of the dilemmas you have in this game is you know, which part of the memory do you trust?
Well, I know my memory's toot, so it's fine.
Some
Calling
people
you Douglas
take it to their grave.
3 days. Yeah.
I always remember. Do you remember Heavy Rain?
Yep.
There's a scene in that game where I can't remember exactly what happens, but someone you bump into someone just in the scene, and something happens. I know someone disappears, or there's an assault or a crime, and then you're questioned by a police officer, and you're like, "Oh, I bumped into this guy," and they ask very simple questions about the description, what they were wearing, and things like that. And you think you in your head as you go through, you think, oh yeah, he's wearing blue trainers, green fleece, a red hat.
Yeah.
And then when it comes back to it, you actually realise you got about 3/4 of it wrong. So this is not quite that level, but that always in a gaming sense, in terms of memory, always stands out for me as a scene that I'm like, yeah, that really proves that you're not really paying attention half the time. You think you are, but you're not.
But how does that memory then play in it? Like, because I'm guessing they're both kind of unreliable narrators. Like, do you get to see like A and B and then the truth in the middle or something? Or
well, no, you get to see A and B, and normally it's like Tyler's perspective and Alison's perspective are two very different ways, or two very different memories. Like, and it's normally about how people are portrayed. So it might be Eddie, for example. Tyler might have a very negative memory of Eddie in that he's shouting, he was an arsehole, he told him to, and things like that. Whereas Alison has a much more glorified and flowery, happy memory, and that actually Eddie was just trying to do what's right by them. And you don't ever get told what's right or wrong. You just have to choose between the two. And
interesting.
You choose the memory, and it can either increase like the bond between the twins or decrease, and that sort of plays out as the series goes on. There's 3 episodes. I should have said that at the start. 3 episodes. They're relatively meaty, sort of 2.5 hours long, maybe 3 hours. So they're not. They felt like they dragged just a tad sometimes, but because there's only 3 of them, you're not going to be having to give up a load of time. But yeah, there's you never really find out what the actual truth is. It's kind of like what you choose to believe more is the question, and you'll come up with some interesting answers for yourself.
Okay, so I mean, to be honest, I'm assuming this plays very much like the sort of gameplay bits out of Life is Strange. Then, so you walk around in an environment and you're clicking on things, and I mean, there's not actually any action to go with. So I'm guessing, like, really the question is then on the story, like, where does this stand in that pantheon? I say pantheon. I think you played 3 games, but like, how does it stack up against their previous work?
Yeah, it's not top of the pile. It's probably below the Life is Strange sort of 3 that I've played.
Straight white man, Wakering, sort of small, closed-minded.
That's it.
Get exposed here to the other bits of the world and struggling.
Yeah, I didn't like the subject matter.
No, go on. Sorry.
No, that it is kind of like that level of, like, it's just probably below Life is Strange. I think Life is Strange genuinely is better, not just because the stories are probably a bit more interesting. A lot more feels like it happens in those games, and you have in both an interesting mechanic to kind of gamify. Like, you can turn back time in Life is Strange 1 and fiddle with things, and in 2, although you don't have direct control over the younger brother, you can direct him to use his power that he's got, which is almost like telekinesis, isn't it? And whatnot. So you don't have that here. It's much more like Beyond the Storm, where it's not really a power as such. It's just the mechanic there to do the memories and to push along the story, I guess. So I think that's where it probably falls a little bit short, is that it doesn't quite have that hook that the other 2 have had, and because Beyond the Storm really was such a well done prequel, it really is so good to play that after playing the first one. This is coming in completely fresh. But it's having a stab at some, as I said, some really interesting subject matter, and I don't think even the most conservative of people will feel that they've had any of this rammed down their throat. It comes across to me very natural, which I suppose is the aim of it, is not to make a big song and dance. It's like, oh, we're doing this, we're putting a spotlight on this character that hasn't had much spotlight previously, transgender, all that. It's just like, no, he just kind of exists in this world, and the best job they've done is making it feel like it's a completely natural, normal thing that's happened.
That's decent. And what, do you know, is there any reason why they've seems to have crammed 5 episodes into 3? Would you like to see this going forward, or stick to the? Because I always thought those other games I played, it was nice and tight. Just it would build. There'd be a crescendo at the end, and just as it would seem to finish where you wanted it to finish. I feel like 3 hours maybe is twice as long as those episodes. Perhaps it seems quite long.
Yeah, I guess what the problem they've got with Tell Me Why is that there's not enough crescendos to warrant more episodes.
Got
So you might have an episode where nothing really happens. It doesn't peak at any point. So they've definitely made the right choice, I think, in doing 3. It just felt a little bit meaty in some areas and perhaps dragged a little bit. But then you've kind of got to let the story tell itself, otherwise you're going to be cutting people out of key information. So it's not an easy balance. I think it's just because playing, and really it's Telltale syndrome, because they were like 90 minutes, like almost to the minute, or even less sometimes. They were very short, sharp episodes, whereas even with Life is Strange they were on the shorter side compared to this, but they felt like they had a bit more meat to them. And I guess it's just coming with those expectations where in my head I sat down on a Saturday afternoon, started at 12 thinking I'll be off by, I can have some lunch after this, have a late lunch, and then it was like closer to 3, maybe past 3, and I was like, cool, what have I done here?
I mean, that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, it didn't feel like it dragged in the moment. I was just surprised. And then because I came conscious that they felt longer than I anticipated, the next episode I was kind of like clock watching, like, right, is this dragging? So I kind of done myself in on that point. I don't think that's necessarily an objective viewpoint. But if you come in with the expectations that they might be a bit longer than anticipated, it'll work really well.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't think I've got any other questions, if I'm honest, because I kind of know, I can tell what this game is kind of like and whatnot. It's just whether, the story's going to appeal to me, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, I think the setting definitely will. I just,
Hey, Alaska.
I think I'd rather, at the moment, go back and finish the other ones, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think you should.
See how I feel.
Like, if they're on Game Pass, finish those for sure. And I'll say play the prequel as well, and then give this a try. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere off Game Pass, this one, because I believe Microsoft published it, so they won't be taking it off there anytime soon, that's for sure. The only thing I wanted to mention is that you get a real good idea of how the twins were as kids, and how kind of connected they were, and like they were like two peas in a pod. And one of the things they do to kind of bring that to your attention, and it actually plays into some puzzles, because there are some puzzle elements to the game. I think in most cases you can kind of skip the puzzle. Like there's like a lock on a door, and it needs you to put these 3 symbols in the right place. But if you don't want to, you can kick the door down. So if you don't want to bother with it, you don't have to, be dealing with that. But in order to solve the puzzle, you have to refer back to this like storybook that Alison, and Tyler and her mum had kind of written together. And there's all like they had this like this goblin world, I think it is, where they kind of like they injected themselves into the stories as goblins, and I think the mum was a character in there and whatnot. But essentially, there are times in the game where you refer to this book, and it's got about 24, maybe not quite 24, but over a dozen stories in there, and you kind of read the story and then have to infer which symbol goes where based on the story. So that's quite a nice little, if you want to tease your brain a little bit, that's actually quite interesting to do, because it's all there in front of you and it'll tell you the story that you've got to read. It's just how you interpret it and whether you can kind of get what they're aiming at. So that's mildly amusing at times.
Nice. And I guess the only other question is then, like, the decisions you make and stuff, are they actually impacting story or so, or is it literally just giving you those stats at the end of like an episode?
I felt like they didn't have too much of an impact. Now, they do towards, like, as in most of these games, there's normally like a few endings, so they will play into that. But I felt like episode to episode, I wasn't really feeling the impact of those. It was bringing up the stats, and they're obviously still very interesting to watch and look back at to see where you stand. But I didn't really feel like the decisions that were highlighted really had any long-term impact on like the next episode. But I guess the way the game's structured there is that does all calculate up into giving you a flavour of an ending that you've kind of crafted, I guess, based on your decisions, but not as impactful, I'd say, as some of the others. And again, that might be along with the sort of lack of the gameplay hook, be why it's not quite top of the pile for the Dontnod boys and girls.
All right, then. And if you haven't got anything else to say, then let's score this Bad boy.
Yeah.
Chalk it up.
So tell me why. Easy one thumb up. No real point in trying to drag it out. It's a good but not great entry from Dontnod. I think if you're looking at who would enjoy this, if you've enjoyed the previous work of Dontnod, you're going to enjoy this because it's, you know, it has that same sort of flavour. And conversely, if you haven't liked the Dontnod games, then probably won't like this. I don't think there's much here to pull you back in. And if you're one of those people that are like, oh, it depends on the story, how strong that is, I'd say give it a go. I mean, if you've got Game Pass, it's a no-brainer. So it's not going to change your mind on these narrative type games. But if you're already invested in the Dontnods, then this is another one to put on your list and get to and get through and see the conclusion of.
Nice.
That's that. Tell me why. Worthwhile, one thumb up. Now, this is a big one because according to OpenCritic, which is what we use to score the Fantasy Gaming League, highest rated game of 2020, start of the new decade, pandemic, not ideal. But according to OpenCritic.com, this is the highest rated game of the year. So if you're looking at just aggregated scores from various outlets, Dimp not included, then Hades is the game to be going after. I played for this on PC, got my hands on it for £5 UK, thanks to a coupon on the Epic Game Store. Note, I had not purchased a single item from Epic before that. That was just from accepting the free games they give, basically. So I was pleased with that. I thought a £5 for a really highly rated game is a worthwhile gamble because it's a roguelike, and I haven't really got on with those in the past. And then I played through it, very much enjoyed it. It's the first time we've spoken about it, but I wanted to give the backstory because after I'd sort of got towards the business end, I said to you, this might be a game up your alley, and it's only on Switch and Windows as we speak. So you went for the Nintendo Switch version, but just out of the gate, it's come from a recommendation. It probably won't get looked at unless I'd put it on your radar. Have I succeeded in giving you a good recommendation, or have I blown it and now at the back of the pile when it comes to saying, oh, next game?
I think you're tooting your own horn a bit there. I had actually seen it, mate. Seen the trailer,
nothing, mate. Come on.
I had.
No, there's no fantasy list where this is on.
I'll be honest. I had, in all honesty, I'd seen that because obviously I love the old Greek mythology. So somehow I got that.
That's what I did. I saw great gameplay matched with Greek mythology.
It's an easy one, isn't it? But yeah, I did see it, and then I saw it was all like that weird. What's it, not horizontal? What's It's not the word.
Isometric type.
Isometric. Thank you. I was like, what is this garbage? And I was like, new, bin that. And then then apps comes a knocking and bloody hell, hounding me to play it.
Well,
downloaded it, left it there because the Switch was, doing the annual minimum 8 months collecting dust.
Yes.
And fine. By the way, actually, what the fuck is a roguelike? Every review for this says, a roguelike. It's like a roguelike. I don't like roguelikes. What is that? A game? A type of? What is that?
So, a roguelike, and this is according to, I think it's Wikipedia, is a subgenre of role-playing games characterised by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, tile-based graphics, and permanent death of the player character on each run. Most roguelikes are based on a high fantasy narrative, but that's not the case here. So essentially, it's a game where you can do it in one go, but you go through the game, and the idea is to get from start to finish, or whatever checkpoint they've decided. If you fail, you lose a lot of your upgrades on your path. If you succeed, you retake some stuff back, but the next time you play it, it will be different in some way. So this is kind of fits the roguelike genre, because we'll get into it, because the level design and order changes as to the power-up. So it's that sort of... It's like running into a brick wall, really, and it's whether you can handle the brick wall and whether the game makes it interesting enough. But that's kind of like a little Wikipedia whistle-stop tour of a roguelike.
Got ya. Right, I'd never heard of that.
So not like so. Demon Souls is sort of similar kind of DNA, because you kind of you want a boss rush, don't you? You want to get to the end of the world, kill the boss, but the difference is that every time you do Demon Souls level, the enemies are in the same place generally, and the outcome is based on your skill and learning the patterns. Whereas Hades is a little bit more dynamic, I guess. There are we'll get to the constraints because it's not completely procedurally generated, but it won't be different from run A to run B to run C, probably. The combination will be different each time.
Yeah.
So
nice, okay.
So, based on that description, have you played any of these before?
Bloody hell, no, mate. Literally, you take out the setting, then I ain't going nowhere near one of those games. That sounds like garbage, if I'm honest.
They're very popular in the smaller sort of indie-based space. And I agree. I've got... I mean, Dead Cells is technically a roguelike. I ain't played that. I think Spelunky's generally considered one, because you keep having a go at that. But this is not a genre I particularly like the sound of, nor really have enjoyed previously. But given that we both played a fair amount of it, I'm willing to bet that the pair of us are quite liking this flavour of roguelike.
Yeah, it's bloody good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is good. We know you like the setting, like you've touched on it, Greek mythology, plays Zagreus. It's called Hades, so we know Hades is lurking, but all sort of like the main Greek gods are referenced. There's probably a few missing, but that's the style of it and the people you're going to meet. How did you like how these characters were portrayed? Because I actually thought the writing was very funny at times, and the voice acting's excellent throughout as well, which kind of brings it to life. But this might have been a bit of a different flavour of your Greek gods and your Greek mythology that you're used to.
Yeah, they've done brilliantly, to be honest, because they've changed. How do you explain this? They've given everyone, like all the main players, pretty much from Greek mythology are there. Achilles and Hades, like you say, and Medusa and the Hydra, and all sorts. But they've kind of made them all, like, I guess, a bit more like melodramatic. They kind of all live or work for Hades himself in his house of Hades, and it could have been a real miss because what's his name? Zagreus is a bit like a sort of cocky teenager, I guess. They could have been
Prince
really
of the underworld, it says, doesn't it? And it's
could have been really annoying, but no, the writing's fantastic. And like, so each time, as you've said, each time you sort of fail, and you're going to do that a lot, you end up back at the beginning, back in the house where you can kind of do your upgrades. You can talk to all the people who work at Hades, or even like the enemies you fight out in the world. Basically, some of them are knocking around having a drink and whatnot, and you'll have all these interactions, and a lot of them, or some of them are will move the story along. Others, they'll just tell you a bit of lore and history, but it's really fleshed out. It's really good.
Yeah,
really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I found the writing excellent. The music's excellent as well. Pretty much anything to do with the game is excellent, really. It's just the genre of roguelike, so whether people can get their heads around it. And I think what's really clever about Hades is that the narrative depends on you kind of failing. Like, you learn something new, not every time, but most of the time when you go back and talk to people, you'll learn something new. It will push along the overarching narrative. It will fill in gaps from why Hades is kind of trying to escape. Is he just like you said, being a petulant kind of teenager and defying his father? And Zagreus, is that what Zagreus is trying to do? But I really liked the way the story was kind of interwoven with the structure of a roguelike, because without the failing, you'd miss a hell of a lot of the story, wouldn't you? And some of the best bits are having a quick chat with some of these gods and then referencing your last run or whatever, and you learn about the relationship of Hades and Zagreus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'll be proved wrong, but I feel like it's not Breath of the Wild. There's no way you're doing this on your first run. It's designed.
I've seen a run; they've done it, but
it's fucking. I knew it would be. It's ridiculous, but no normal person's doing that. So I feel like, it's obviously built in that you're going to fail, and I'd be curious to know, like, even like a reasonably good player, like, would you miss much of the story by being that good? Well, you wouldn't know, because actually it's something we can go into, can't we, in a bit. Also, what I'd like to say is it really doesn't hold your hand. Like, I think I was probably, I reckon, more than 10 hours deep before I kind of even grasped all of the systems. And even then, there was a few bits I didn't get till way later.
No, it's definitely, that was, I thought you would say that, because I felt exactly the same. Like, I chucks you in there and you're like, okay, I guess it's just this. And it's not, and you don't really learn much. They don't really tell you a great deal. You just kind of learn through repetition and understanding, like, even like the basic things. So each time you sort of beat a level or a stage or a room, I guess is the best way to, or a chamber, I think they're called. Every time you beat a chamber, you normally get a choice between going between like the door on the left or the door on the right, and they'll have little icons above them, sort of. That's communicating to you what reward or what potential reward could be on the other side. At the start, you don't know what any of this stuff means. You don't know what any of the symbols mean. So you're kind of just going through blind, and you think, oh, what's this purple stuff? Do I need some of that? And over time, obviously, you learn exactly what each of these mean. Some might be referring to a particular god. Like, one might be Ares' signal, and you'll be like, oh, I've got, and we'll go into the boons and whatnot in a bit, but I've got like a really good Achilles type, or not Achilles because he's not in it. Who's that one that floats about, that running bastard, little light feathered?
Oh yeah, I know who you mean.
Who's that water one? We'll use him. Ares and Poseidon.
Poseidon, thank you,
mate. This is it.
I don't know how much Poseidon's in. Yeah, he wasn't Jason the Argonauts, was he? So.
No, he might have Poseidon's like defense, buff, and you think, oh, that'll go really well with Ares' like attack buff or whatever. So you'll choose that room, and it doesn't tell you any of this. Like, you just have to learn through playing the game. And I'm sure there's a fucking manual somewhere, help hidden away in the game. But you're correct. Like, it will not hold your hand. And if you're really stuck, I'd say just look it up and suss it out, because it will save you some time probably. But I never felt like I failed because I made the wrong decision. It was almost always because of my skill level or power level not quite being there. I never sort of took a door, then died two chambers later and thought, oh, it's because I chose Ares instead of Poseidon. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. I think you get I know you're going to talk about the boon shortly, but yeah, I think sometimes, like, because obviously it is procedural, and you never know what you're going to get on that run. And there's a couple of times where I sort of felt like especially like going through my first, like getting towards the end of my first successful run, I knew like my preferred build, and sometimes those like power ups just weren't coming to me, and that kind of pissed me off a bit. But that's kind of all part of it, because obviously, as you've said, there's like, once you unlock the weapons, they're free for you to use whenever, like they're always there available. And then certain things, like it's called the Mirror of Fate, right? There's power ups there. So essentially, as you do runs, some power-ups will remain with you, and most of them are tweakable. Like, there's option A and B for almost all of them. But then on every single run, you'll get, as you've said, like a series of options that will lead to power-ups, and then there'll be drops randomly, or characters will come in to help. There's like a bunch of different things that then can like change your build for that run. And make it very, very different. Yeah.
So the boons. So basically, there's no set pattern. I don't think, not that I could suss out, as to which god you bump into and what the boons are going to be. And each god, so Poseidon and Ares, we're using as our example. They each have their own set of boons, which is basically buffs. They might change the damage that you output on that particular run. They might add a deflective element to your dash. They might add something to your ranged weapon, which I can't remember for the life of me what it's called. So not only do you have a random selection of boons like that you could pick up, you also have the added sort of dice roll of who actually you're going to bump into. And like you said, over time you'll probably learn to favour certain gods because they fit your play style. I found the deflecting elements really helpful for certain enemies because you could just sort of dash through and it'll deflect it. You don't take any damage.
Yeah.
But if you're going for a high damage run, you might want someone like Ares to drop, and it'll increase the efficiency of your sword or your casting. That's the other weapon type there. But there's no way you can predict any of this. So really, you've got to get yourself good and capable with all sorts of different gameplay elements. And I guess that's probably one of the strengths of the game. Something that definitely kept me hooked is that you don't know what you're going to get on each run, so you don't really know how you're going to have to approach or play certain parts of the run.
Yeah, exactly. What was I going to say? What was your favourite weapon out of interest?
Probably the bow.
Yeah.
I did like the sword as well, but I felt like the bow, you could do quite a lot of things with that. I didn't get on with the shield. I didn't get on with the claw. I didn't get on with the gun. So
ironically, you've mentioned every weapon there, bar the one I was my favourite, which is that like 3-pronged like spear.
Oh yes, the spear. That was actually no. Because you could, with the spear, you could throw it out and pull it back, and it would get a double damage.
It was Kratos vibes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that.
No, you're right. That was actually that was where I was most effective, I think.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, so you've got a number of weapons you can choose from the outset. I think you have to unlock 3 of them, or maybe 4 of them to start with. You only get the sword to kick things off, but you unlock those pretty quickly. You can also add trinkets, which are like permanent stat buffs or elements to Zagreus for each run, and that's not a currency. That's like you just leave it on and it'll be there the next run. So one of the ones I found really helpful was basically if your life depletes, it'll bring you back at half health. And
that's decent. I think you told me about that. That really helped.
I think I might have got it from Cerberus. I can't remember where I got it from, but yeah. So there's a number of different things like that you could, like a trinket that you can add that will give you a particular skill. And I always just felt like having the extra life was just valuable, because once you die, you could get to the last boss of this game, you go back to the beginning every time. Now,
but we should say that a good run from beginning to end is probably 40 minutes, maybe? It's not long, is it?
No, it's not long at all.
Like, don't get me wrong, it still fucking sucks when you get that far and die. It happened to me a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But you will get put down a lot in this game.
Yeah, you will.
Things hit hard. What else was I... Go on, sorry.
So the only good thing I was going to say is that, you will die a lot, and you could die 38 minutes into a projected sort of 40-minute run and be sad, but you will go back to base, quote-unquote, with something to upgrade or some sort of... You'll have more with that purple stuff that helps you kind of experience and level up. So you very rarely leave empty-handed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you always feel like you've made some progress generally, like and sometimes you go out with that exact intention just to get some more currency or to get also actually didn't mention this. I don't know if you've done this. So like there's what's he called? The guy next to Hades in his house, like the contractor, I think he's called.
Oh yeah.
So like you can do like a lot of it's cosmetic, like you can like change your room in Hades and things and just put up posters, but you can actually make permanent changes to the underworld. I think one of the most beneficial, like you can put down these like healing pools, I guess like a little spa.
That's it.
That you'll come across, and that's another way of like boosting your health on a run. So you can literally, I think you can put one in each. Is it 4 areas?
That's
4 main areas of health. So like that can be really helpful, and you can again do that by earning like currency essentially and paying for these extra things to go in. So it's another thing you can do to, like, that's the thing. There's a lot you can do, or you can kind of you can leave, I guess, if you don't come across it. It's not the end of the world, basically.
No.
One of the, I can't remember which one it was now. Some real good perk I didn't find out until after I'd beat the game for the first time, basically, and I was like, oh, that would have been really handy.
Yeah, so it's clever because you've got the key, you've got a number of different currencies that you can spend for different items when you get back to the underworld, which is like Hades' house, basically. You've got like these keys that you can collect throughout your run, they'll go back with you. You've got gold, which stays with you only during your run, so there are shopkeepers and merchants, so spend that up when you get the chance. That won't come back with you. You've got the purple stuff that I can't remember exactly what it's called. Darkness, is it? I think it's called
that's it. Yeah, it is.
And then you've got gems, which are items that are used mainly for that contractor. I found I've started using those for them. But you've also got another like little rogue trade, like a little black market fella, where if you've got like 10 gems and you need some darkness, you can kind of trade your darkness in for trade your gems in for a load of darkness. So that's one way of trying to get something you need. Like if you see an unlock or a particular perk that you want, like it might increase your damage or whatever in the mirror, where what Adcock talked about earlier, then you can do that as well. I even started fishing at one point because they
I found that out late actually. And also there's those kind of like, I guess like sort of gambling almost. I've done it a lot at the beginning, but then kind of binned it, which is when you go into that chaos world. So essentially you beat a level or a room, and then there'll be like a portal and you can go into that, and what optional. That would do completely optional, and it will give you one of like 3 choices, and it'll be like a negative impact for so many rooms. So it will say you'll get to see all 3 choices essentially, and it might be like for the next 5 rooms take 50% more damage, but then if you succeed in that you get another boost permanently for that run. It'll completely reset afterwards. But to be honest, like it did work for me a couple of times, but I found that there's normally one option that's quite easy, but then the reward will be to.
Yes.
But the other 2 generally, like it'll be like reduce your speed by like 60%, and then it's always the most bastard hard levels that then spawn after that, and I found that difficult, so I left that, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't. I definitely played around with it to start with. Ages to talk to I think I wanted to give him, like, you can give people what is it, like a little fucking drink or something, like as a present. I can't remember what it's called now. But you can basically collect those during your runs and give those to characters, and then they'll sometimes it unlocks like a trinket for you. Like I was talking about earlier, you might have a specific chaos trinket, for example, or just new dialogue options. So I did enough to build up a relationship so I could give him that little drink or whatever it was. But yeah, after a while, I was like, I'm actually, unless I get basically the one that's, like you said, like maybe a bit slow for 4 rooms and then it doubles my health, like the trade-off here is just not working for me, because normally when you enter it takes like 30% of your health each time you go in, so it already takes some of your health off just to go in and have a look, and then you have to pick one, so you don't really get a choice. But it works in the same way as the boons actually. So when Ares rocks up, you normally get 3 choices, so you can kind of choose the boon that you want if you see one you like. But and there's so much to this game, and you wouldn't expect it to have all this, but there's also like a little achievements book, isn't there?
That's it.
That basically I like the things like trying all the weapons out, getting a certain amount of kills with weapons, trying all the boons of a specific god, and over time you'll just naturally unlock those as you play the game, because it forces you to kind of try different things because the options aren't always there. And then your reward for completing like a full like Ares entry, for example, might be darkness or gems or something else. So there's tons of different bits and pieces, and the game just kind of expands as you go on. But I feel like it does a good job of, like, yes, initially you're feeling overwhelmed, it's feeling complicated, but the other options that come later on, you kind of welcome, because you've got your head around the base of the game, and you're like, oh, this just gives me another tool if I wish to go down that route.
That, and do you know what? It's funny, because I think if I was listening to you and someone else talk about this, I'd be like, don't care if it's the highest rated game. That sounds like that is not my type of game. Lists, menus, boons, like things like that. Normally, I'm not like an RPG. Anything that's too complicated, I'm out. But the core of the game, everything. Obviously, you do need all of those things we've said. But there's no right or wrong way. I'm assuming you can beat the game, with any one of the million combinations of things you can do. So it is really like action heavy and focused. Like, it is like fun, and it's so fast paced. It's unbelievable. Yeah. There's bosses at the end of each area. They're really good, all of them. Yeah. I still never understood the first one, really. It's like the 3 sisters or whatever. Like, I never knew which one I was going to get. It confused me for ages. I was like, why am I fighting different people? Never knew that.
No, I think they're obviously like, they are sisters, but I guess they're like guardians of Hades. He's like, right, one of you go out and stop Zagreus from escaping. It's like, well, well.
But that's again one of the things I love though is the fact they build like the death loop into it. So they, obviously every time you come up against a boss, they'll say, it's not endless, but they'll reference the fact that you two have been fighting now on like an endless loop, and it's decent. It's really smart, smart.
Yeah, it's a great game. It's definitely challenging at times. You, like Adcock said, you'll be very lucky. Well, I don't think it's possible for you just to pick this up on your first ever run and do it. You have to be. You can do it if you're very familiar with the game and you're good at it, so you could restart and do it that way. But your first run, you probably think you're doing quite well, and then when you realise the scope of it, you'll be like, "Oh, I've actually got a number of different chambers left." And yeah, the loop aspect of it even makes complete narrative sense, even in like post game as well. So they've completely thought about how the game mechanics work and the structure of the game can weave its way into the narrative. So even when you're essentially done with any sort of narrative bits and pieces, it still makes sense that you'll be going on these runs and whatnot. So for those that like that consistency, for those that enjoy the attention to detail as to why you're doing things in games, there's not many gaps in the world of Hades. They really have thought of everything and tied it to this roguelike mechanic where you expected to go on runs and do well and try and get through and probably fail. Well, you will fail more times than you succeed.
Yeah, it proper teases you to have multiple runs at the end. It's so smart. I mean, like I said, I think I've beat it twice.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I have YouTubed it now, so I have seen everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should have gone back and done it more, but it's very, very clever, very smart. I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, it's one of the few games that kind of puts its narrative into the gameplay mechanics and makes it make sense. Like it's completely one big package and doesn't feel like it's been bolted on. It's been designed with this intention.
Yeah.
It's delivered with it. And like we haven't really spoke too much about the gameplay, but the action's fucking incredible, isn't it? Like it's great fun to go around the chambers and whatnot, but you know the action is where it's at.
Exactly. I guess we should just like basically you'll walk into a room and there'll be like enemies there or they'll spawn, and you literally like dance around 1,000 miles an hour. Like it becomes so intuitive very quickly, but you're quickly identifying who you need to take out first, put them down, but then loads of other enemies will spawn in. Like, it's brutal, mate. I don't know. Did you play on mouse and keyboard then?
No, I plugged the controller in.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, yeah. You can play it mouse and keyboard, but I think I've been watching a documentary, the No Clip documentary they did. It's like a 4 or 5 part series. The last one is just out now. And there's a bit in there about the keyboard, mouse and keyboard players, and they're saying it's really hard. And there's like this one like tester that works, which a lot of testers working on the game. She's like, no, I find it really easy. And they're all like, well, we're fucking struggling.
Mate, I had proper claw hands a few times playing it. I had to like shake it off. I was like, Jesus, this is taking it out of me.
Yeah, it gets intense. It gets really intense at times. And the art style's excellent. Like, there's just so many good things about the game. Yeah. The only thing I would say as a negative is, like, you mentioned the multiple runs, like to be successful and sort of quote unquote complete the game, you got to escape. I'll just say it. You got to escape 10 times, which once you've done it once you've kind of, it's a big achievement because I think it was like 30 runs before I got through it, like at least once. So that was a huge moment. And then for the game to be like, yeah, you got to do it a few more times. I was quite deflated, if I'm honest.
Do you know what? I was the opposite because I was like, do you know what? I've done the game. I was happy. Wow. And I was like, and you get that sort of tease of the story.
Yeah.
And I know like it shouldn't be the way, but I knew I could just, look at someone else's, story and YouTube it and just get that if I wanted to. So I was like, I get what you're saying. It didn't really bother me. I thought it was pretty smart, to be fair.
Well, you didn't do it though.
Well, no, because I'm not mad, mate.
Talking a big game.
That. Do you know what though? You should say though that I didn't know this until you told me. There is like a boon that you can put on yourself that does. It's called the God boon, and it reduces all damage from the minute you leave it'll start your quest by like what? Oh no, it actually builds, doesn't it? It starts at like 20% less damage.
That's it, yeah.
And on every failed run, it will give you like an extra 2%. I think. I don't know what it goes up to.
Yeah, I think it like caps out like 40 or 60%. Yeah. But yeah, so actually, like once I'd done the first run, I think I may have done one more run after that, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. And I'm enjoying it, but I don't want to deal with the frustration of failing.
Yeah.
I put the God mode on. I put the boon on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't fail after that, so I didn't get to see it rise or anything. And I still died. Came close to dying several times. I still had to. I got complacent for the first few runs. I was like, right, I need to pretend that I haven't got this anymore. So that's actually like a good point, because it doesn't completely make the game a cakewalk, but it gives just enough accessibility, I feel like, to, if you are struggling, chuck the God mode boon on. It's not God mode, you're not invincible, you still will die, but it'll just make things a bit tougher on the enemies to put you down.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's a good sort of balance, I guess. And that's what I did for the remaining 8 or so runs that I had left. I was like, look, I don't want to be failing at the final gates again, if I'm honest. So I want to see how this pans out. I plonked that on and watched it all unfold and played through it. But excellent video game, really. Not a lot of negatives to say about it. I mean, it's a tough one to play and get through, but once you get up to speed, it is a game that you can either say, and this is why I think playing it on the Switch is a great idea. You can say, right, I've got an hour, I could just do one run, like, because you'll be finished whether you're successful or you fail in that run. Or you could sit there and play it for 3 hours. Like, it really does have that level of accessibility where you can play it for a small chunk of time or a much longer chunk of time, which I think's great. What was you playing, handheld or docked?
Yeah, I think everything was hand. I think on the second run, I played the last boss on TV. Everything else handheld.
Yeah, and easy as that. So it can be playable in that format as well.
Yeah, I found on the Switch as well, especially that I've only played it on Switch, but even to ram home that point more, sometimes I would just like come out and leave it in the save state, just clear a room, and then just, familiarise myself with what boons and stuff I had, and start again. Like, it's easy to pick up and put down. It's very good.
Yeah, it facilitates a number of different ways to play, which is good. Right, I think that's all I've had to say on Hades. And if you had anything else,
no, that's everything.
Let's get to the scoring of it then. So, what say you, Hades Switch version?
It's an easy 2 thumbs in it for me. No problems at all.
Yep. I would say, well, it's only between 1 and 2 choices, 1 or 2. You know what? I feel like for a genre that I've just never either A, liked the sound of, or B, got on with when I've tried them, that this does more than enough to sort of bring me in line with it. And I think that's a big thing. So I think there's going to be lots of players like us that had played it or have played roguelikes or similar types of games and just bounced off them, whereas this kept both of us hooked in, both of us engaged. It kept me hooked in, kept me engaged. The writing, the music, the story's all there, the action's there, the weapon choices are there, the boons, the different ways in which you can play the game, the random elements of the game just add to it. It's a 2 thumbs up, isn't it? I've just talked myself into it. Hades, 2 thumbs up from the apps and the Adcock. So that's Crufts, really. Look, we've got some more games to talk about. We'll save it for another week. So the guys will be left on tenterhooks for at least another 7 days before they get their apps and Adcock feel. Before we close this episode down, we mentioned it a few weeks ago that it could be a possibility. It didn't seem like it was going to happen. Yet I get a message 10 days or so ago saying the PS5 has been sold. Now, we know we talked briefly about the rationale behind it. It wasn't necessarily a scalping move. There just wasn't that you didn't feel like you was going to play it, but you've parted ways of it now. For
it's gone.
A nice profit, I'm told.
Reasonable profit.
Well, local as well. Kept it in the community.
Harlow, I think you drove down from.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was like Barling Way. I don't know what
no.
There's been a few days or a few weeks even since you did that. How are you feeling with that decision? Still, I mean, bank balance is pleased, but as they say, money is the root of all evil. So do you feel slightly corrupted?
Do you know what? I'm fine with it. In that, I never listen. Before you in the halls of the world shut me down,
I bought that nothing, console, so he can't comment.
I bought that console with every intention of keeping it. That was never, never sold a console on early or anything. Don't care about stuff like that. But bought it, played through Demon's Souls. That was the game I wanted. That was the game I got. Done it. I was in no rush. Lent the console to my nephew, let him play through. He's a big fan of the Souls games, talk about him often. He done it in a week or so. Had the console back, and I was like, I'm playing Hades on the Switch. That's getting its annual dust off.
Yeah.
I'm not playing PlayStation. And so I thought, do you know what? I'll see what the deal is. I'll put it on eBay. I'll put it on Gumtree or whatever and see what happens. I had a price in my mind. I was like, if it sells for that, I'll do it. If it don't, I'm not messing around. And for a couple of weeks it was up. I was just getting so many people trying to I only wanted cash on arrival and all of that. They were trying to rip me off with these PayPal scams.
Yeah.
So after 2 weeks, I was like, you know what, I'm done. Took it off of eBay. I think that's when I said to you, I'm done with it. I'll keep it. I'm not bothered. And then weirdly, some fella got in touch with me. The Gumtree ad was still live. It must have dropped down miles by then. So he's scouring, poor little rat.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you want to sell it for less than you want? And I was like, no, mate, not interested. And do you know what? We just got into a bit of a chat, and I was like, look, mate, this is what I want for it. Otherwise, I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's just so annoying. He goes, everyone's trying to con me. And I was like, look, mate, these scalpers, sooner or later there's going to be a drop. Ironically, I don't think there really has been.
No.
But I was like, they're going to get anyone who's actually just bought a load to try and sell them, at some point they're going to shit themselves because they have loads of excess stock. Anyway, it became a bit of a back and forth. And in the end, I think, because from his point of view, I think he said to me, everyone keeps asking him to send the money before,
right?
He wants to pick it up and everyone wants to send it to him. So I think he's worried about getting scammed.
Yeah.
And I was like the opposite, and I was like, and in the end, he came back with the price I wanted. He goes, look, if I come tomorrow, can you get it? Can I have it? And I was like, yeah, no worries. And he turned up. And you know what? The only thing I felt for a few days is I was like, shit, I hope they don't come out now, because I don't want this guy to have paid 350 quid over the odds for it. And then they drop on the Thursday. To be fair, I said to him, I was like, oh, what games are you going to get? He was like, yeah, FIFA and COD. For fuck's sake, I'm like, more fool you then. If you're going to play them, whatever. But at least he's got, I don't know if he's got his money's worth, but, they're still gold dust. So I'm like, he can probably ration it out to himself that he's got himself a deal. I'm happy enough. I mean, I'm not even looking. I'm just going to... Resident Evil's the next game I want to play on next gen. So I think that's May. Hope, fingers crossed.
Well, Xbox already saying shortage till past the summer.
Well, mate, do you know what? I mean, there is no guarantee, and I'm well aware of that. It could come back to sting me hard. But fingers crossed I can get myself one. But I'm not getting involved. I'm not monitoring anything. I'm not getting involved in all of that. I'll wait till they come in. I'll be patient. And worst case, I've got the Xbox Series S. I could always play a downgrade version of it, I guess. That would really annoy me, though. I have to pretend it doesn't. I'll be like, it's just as good. So that's it, really. That's the story. And I'm all right with the decision.
Well, there you go, then.
Yeah.
No complaints there. Right, let's close this one down. Let everyone get on with their lives. If you stumbled across us and you've, only you listen to this episode, haven't subscribed, you can do on any podcast outlet. Worldwide podcasts, running right in India still, overtaking the UK fan base, but you can find us pretty much anywhere. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Pocket, it's all there. Google, just type in Idle Game Chat, it's there. Hit the subscribe button, you'll be treated to an episode every Monday unless something goes wrong. Or I did install a rule where we won't do any on bank holidays, so that'll be tested later on this year. But as usual, nothing more for us to say apart from thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.